For the next 15 minutes, we will provide a visual and audio tour of the instructions to use the fundraising fitness test. They explain the versions of Excel that work properly with this tool, the steps to prepare your transaction data extraction, how to copy the data into the fitness test, how to paste it. There's shortcut steps that make that very quick, regardless of how many rows of data that you have. And then there's some instructions on verifying that the results are accurate before you print or save the reports. And then steps to copy some data and paste it into the growth and giving calculator and activate the macros and utilize the calculators, and as well as a few tips about exporting and some reminders about dropping the headers when you copy your data, and a few other common issues that have come up. And then there are the exact steps of how to get your data out of eTapestry or Razor's Edge. If you happen to be using a different donor software, you need to contact your support department to help you with that step. This screen is showing a gift transaction file, which is just the account number that links multiple gifts from a single source, the date the gift was received, and the amount of the gift. This particular file has 59,741 rows of data. And if you scroll to the bottom of the file or do Control-End, once you end up in the third column right here on the last row, you can do Shift-Control-Home, and it will jump back to the top of the file in a split second. And then if you release everything but the Shift key and right-click in the second row of data, it will drop the header, which is something that's very crucial for the macros to run correctly. Then release the Shift key, right-click your mouse, and say Copy, and the dotted lines appear around your entire data set. Then we move to the fundraising fitness test file and the first tab, which is called Data, and land in column A, row 2, right below the account header, and right-click the mouse and say Paste, and now all the data has jumped from the blank worksheet into the fundraising fitness test. Now I need to switch to a different file so that we don't have to take the time for processing. So once your data is in the first tab, you would come to the second tab, which is the green one called Step by Step down here at the bottom of the screen on the left. And you would set these indicators in these three boxes for the fiscal year or calendar year. So if you're on a calendar year, you leave that to 12 because that box is indicating the end point for your data set within the calendar month, and then the red box is indicating the latest year of data that's in the extraction for a complete 12-month comparison. And in this case, the example data we're using is only through December 2012, which is why this is set to 12 and this is set to 12. Then as soon as you get off the red box, it will automatically subtract 1, and most of the reports are comparing whatever 2 years are in this box. Then when you have set those correctly, you go up to this box which says Enable Content or Enable Macros, depending on which version you have. And when you click that, it will then make it able to run the macros, and then you just click Run Fitness Test. And then the calculator will start populating up here in column H. In the first row, it will put the start time, and Then when it finishes, it will put the end time, and then the third row will be the elapsed time. When it has finished running, you go back to the Data tab, and you will notice that the donor ID or account numbers now are sequential. When you pasted the data, they would have been whatever donor numbers that you use in your software, but the macros erase that number and put a new one because of inconsistencies in that field. The second indicator that the macros have run successfully is column D will now be populated with a 4-digit year, and column E will have a number that matches your last row of data. Now when people paste the data in, sometimes they're confused because it may have the last row of data populated, and a few of the red cells right here in columns G and H may be populated, but that is just a static number from the last time the fitness test was used. So if these numbers in column A are not sequential and column D is empty, it doesn't matter what's over here. Then it will also in column F tell you what the oldest gift in your file is, which should generally be consistent with what you know you copy and pasted. And then if the macros have run successfully, the numbers in G, rows 2 and 3 will match right here, and in columns H for the same rows, those numbers will match. And as long as they do, you can move to the third tab, which is the first report called Top Indicators. And this report is the most valuable indicators of 153, I believe, that can be measured just from the 3 fields of gift transaction data. And the most valuable part of this tool is that it measures gains and losses and tells you the net, and it also divides your gifts across gift ranges so that you don't just have a total for all your donors, you have it by the size of your gifts. The significance of the red cell right here is that this number corresponds to this black report right here hiding over near the right margin called All Indicators. So you want to, before you print the reports, you want to scan through each of them and see that the red cell is the same number as what's in one of the red cells in the All Indicators report. And the reason for that is that the reports are measuring so many different things that there is no report that has no report has the same single number in it for you to know your data is actually populating the reports that you're viewing. So it's important to double check that the red numbers agree with the red numbers in the All Indicators report. And if you look down the column B, you will see the different categories of indicators that are being measured in this report. And this is a one-page report that will show you more than any of the other indicators when you are making a positive improvement from the last time you ran the reports. And the categories are donor retention rate. There are 3 measurements within that category. Then there's donor acquisition, and there's 3 indicators. Donor gains and losses, there are 4 indicators. The number of donors, and there are 2 indicators. 2 indicators for the amount of gifts, 3 indicators for dollar gains and losses, 1 indicator for growth in giving, 1 for growth in donors, 1 for distribution of year 2 donors, and then underneath what year 1 donors did in year 2, there are 3 indicators, 1 for repeat donors and 2 for lapsed donors. Then the second report is the fundraising income summary, and it also has the gift ranges as well as the red cells that correspond to the All Indicators report. This is the Pareto principle, which is another way to describe the 80-20 rule. And in the yellow cells, it's just drawing your attention to what portion of your gifts come from what percentage of your donors. This report is showing on one page 6 years of performance at a glance. So this is a repeat of the second report, but it includes 6 years of performance on one page rather than the gift ranges. And if you don't have 6 years of data, the cells just won't calculate on whichever columns there isn't enough data. And this report reads left to right, so the oldest year is at the left, so this cell is yellow to remind you if you are comparing numbers between the various reports down here at the bottom of the screen, you want to utilize the right column for that purpose, because otherwise you'll be very confused when you are looking at numbers in the first indicators report for the top indicators, and then looking at numbers here in the first column, which is the natural place to go when you start reading something on this page. So that yellow cell is just there as a reminder if you're doing comparisons between the reports. The Greenfield report is what the noted consultant Jim Greenfield wants to know about a hospital fundraising program before he gives any advice on what they could do better. And just these 5 simple indicators over a 3-year period give him a very good understanding of what they're doing correctly and what they might do better. And then the next report is a variation of the Greenfield report, and it measures 4 of those indicators, but extrapolates it throughout the gift ranges like the other reports. The gain-loss report comes from the Fundraising Effectiveness Project, and it has been added to the Fundraising Fitness Test because it illustrates things a bit more clearly than the newer reports that you've already seen, and the same applies to the Year 2 distribution. The Comparison FEP Ratios report is showing the Year 1 performance here in the first column, C, and Year 2 for gifts in the upper half of this page, and then it is showing the equivalent percentages for gains with new, recapture, and upgrade, and then losses for downgrade, lapsed, new, and lapse repeat, and then it has a net. And the lower half of the page is measuring donor performance by Year 1 and 2, and it has the same categories of gains and losses, and then the net. And the second column in yellow is showing the cumulative highest performance of 3,200 nonprofits that participated in the Fundraising Effectiveness Project, and the percentages that applied to each of the line items for the group as a whole. And the reason that this report is here is because everyone is initially curious to see if they're doing, as good as everybody else, or hopefully a little better. But what we have found is in almost every case, the performance on this report shows that the individual data sets are actually doing worse than the accumulation of participants in the Fundraising Effectiveness Project. And the value of that is so that you don't spend a lot of time trying to compare yourself with another entity. You just use these reports to improve your performance at your institution with your donors who give to your programs, because no other institution has the exact challenges you do. They don't have your staff, they don't have your budget, and they don't necessarily have the relationship with their donors that you have with yours, or vice versa. So what this shows is that the performance of this data set is below the group average for new gifts. It is below the group average for recapture of gifts. It is below for upgrades of gifts, and in the net it is performing at 38.2% versus 60.9%. Then when losses are considered, they're doing slightly better. They're doing about the same for lapsed new, and they are doing slightly worse for lapsed repeat. So they are doing a little bit better on the losses side, but in the net, they were doing so poorly on the gains that they're actually more than twice as bad off for gifts as the cumulative data set. When you move to the lower half of the chart, you'll notice that they're within 10 points on gains, and they're about 13 points off on losses, but in the net, they are about 2.5 points higher, percentage points higher than that. So if this nonprofit was getting more money from the donors that they have, the upper part of this chart would improve dramatically. Now, this is just a very quick glance at everything that the fundraising fitness test can measure, and you don't want to spend much time here except to study these red cells in column D, because everyone is overwhelmed when they see this many numbers and they just really can't digest all of it. But it illustrates the power of what you can do with gift transaction data and how it can be made useful. Now I will show you how to take data from the tables that were created by the macros and paste that into the growth and giving calculator so that you can run some projections on how improving certain areas of your program performance will affect the bottom line within the next 12 months. So if you don't see the yellow tab down here at the end of the ribbon of worksheets following the All Indicators report, just go over here to the arrows in the left corner and just scroll over until you see it and land on to What If. And this is a page of 6 tables that need to be copied into the growth and giving calculator. And the way that that is copied is you just land in cell A1, drag it over to H, and scroll down to line 174 so that you are grabbing all 6 tables in one step. And you just hit copy, which I'm not, well, I can actually do the copy step, and then you see the dotted lines appear. Then we move over to the growth and giving calculator and go to the very first tab, which is yellow. It is corresponding to the color of the tab we came from, and it says from test. And you land in cell A1 and hit paste, and the data will overwrite all 6 tables in one step. I'm not going to do that step right now because I've already set these 3 calculators to illustrate something very quickly. But you would paste that and then go up here to enable content and say yes or enable macros. Then you go to the second tab, which is the green one called Step by Step, and click this gray box where it will synchronize the data from the yellow tab to the 3 calculators in the red reports. And when we go to the first report, you will see that this is measuring if you retained more donors, what that would do. And the way that this calculator works is you put percentages in any of the line items for new donor retention rate right here, corresponding to the yellow cells, in any of the gift ranges, and also for repeat donor retention rate across the 5 gift ranges. And the numbers can be positive or negative, and it will calculate within that gift range what the impact is and give you a grand total. Now these numbers look suspiciously high for a 3% improvement, and the reason is that the three calculators can work independent of one another, or they can work in conjunction with each other. And for purposes of this illustration, I am showing you how they work in conjunction. And the way that you do that is when you have finished playing with calculator number 1 and you leave your inputs in the yellow cells and move to the next calculator, the numbers add sequentially as you go through each calculator if the numbers were not reset to 0. So what you're seeing even on the first report, these numbers match between the 3 reports because it is a cumulative total of all 3. So you'll notice that this is 72,752 for calculator 3, the same for calculator 2, and for calculator 1. So the first calculator was measuring if you retain more donors. The second one measures if you acquired more donors, and you have 2 lines for your variables. And calculator 3 is measuring if repeat donors gave more. And in this calculator, you have 3 line items that you can play with. And if you don't want a cumulative effect between all of the 7 indicators of the 3 calculators, then you just set the variables back to 0 before you move to the next one. And then when you see something that you want to share or retain, you can just save the file or print the reports and have that for your records so that you can refer to it down the road and make comparisons on how well you're achieving the goals that you're striving for based on these calculators. And that concludes the very brief overview of how to utilize the fundraising fitness test.